Hello, so this is part two. I'm going to hopefully get this through in three videos, maybe to get this through, but here's part two. So where we left off is talking about outsourcing. Outsourcing is when you go to an outside company to help you. We've had that term before, that's not new. The term here, global outsourcing, when you use the term global, you simply mean going to an outside country to do something for you. So a couple of years ago, I was working with a startup that wanted to develop an app for your phone. And there was a company here in the UAE that was able to do it for 70,000 dirhams. And there was a company in India that was able to do it for 10,000 dirhams. So they offered the same things that they could do, but one was wanting for 70,000 dirhams, the other was willing to do it for 10,000 dirhams. Obviously, we're more excited to go pay only 10,000 dirhams. So that's an example of global outsourcing. The term competitors. A competitor is anybody who is selling to the same customers. We've already talked about distributors. We've talked about customer. A customer is anybody anyone who buys things is a customer. The term competitors is anybody who you compete against that sells to the same customers as you is considered to be a competitor. But sometimes competitors are not the same as rivals. So the best example of a competitor and the term rival here is that if you consider the company to be your enemy, then you consider them to be a rival. So the best example of a rivalry is Apple versus Samsung. They really dislike each other. So that is rivalry. The term barrier to entry. A barrier is anything that blocks you. So this wall is a barrier, okay? So when we talk about barrier to entry, we're talking about things that make it difficult for a company to enter into the market, okay? So in barrier to entry, this is anything, back over here, this is anything that makes it hard to start a business. And I have some examples here of barriers to entry. Economies of scale can be a barrier to entry. You have economies of scale, this term, in your economics class. So I may be repeating something you've already covered in another class. Economies of scale is when you have very high startup costs, then you have to sell thousands and thousands of that, whatever it is, in order for you to be able to make a profit. Think about this. If you wanted to start building cars tomorrow, if you wanted to build cars, you would have to build huge factories. You'd have to employ thousands of people. It would be, the startup costs would be huge, okay? You would have to sell hundreds of thousands of those cars in order for you to be able to make a profit. So that's barriers to entry. That's economies of scale. Example of barriers to entry, economies of scale. Car manufacturing, airplane manufacturing, they have huge economies of scale. Even if you had a lot of money, it would be very difficult to start up a car factory. Even if you had a lot of money, it'd be very difficult to start up start a company that makes airplanes. In fact, a good example of this economies of scale being so high, every airplane that I have flown out of Abu Dhabi and Dubai, have all been from either Boeing in the US or Airbus in Europe, specifically France. So so there's only two major, of making the really big planes in the world, there are only two companies. So that's an example of economies of scale. The opposite of economies of scale is when you have low startup costs. So if you wanted to start a coffee shop, that's an example of a low barrier to entry. Another thing that can keep companies from succeeding is that their competitors may have brand loyalty. So the best example of brand loyalty is your teacher, Steve. I have incredible brand loyalty to Coca-Cola. So Pepsi could come out with some amazing drink that everyone in the world loves, and I wouldn't care. I am loyal to my Coca-Cola, and that's not going to change. Even when I drink my tea, I drink it out of a Coca-Cola glass, okay? That is brand loyalty. Government regulations. The term regulations are anything that make it more difficult to start a business. So for example, an example of the word regulation means rules. It's kind of like laws, but it's more like rules. I don't know the difference between a regulation and a law. It's not, I don't care, but but it is a little bit different than laws, okay? An example of a government regulation in this country that makes it hard for me to start a business, for example, is the 51% local ownership. So if I wanted to open Steve's coffee shop, if I wanted to open my own coffee shop, I have to have a local partner, okay? That makes it less likely that I'm going to want to do it if I didn't have a good local friend. Now, I do have some good local friends. I would be happy to open a coffee shop with my friend Mansour, for example. But not everybody does have a local friend. And so that's an example of a regulation that can make it more difficult for somebody to start a business. Other regulations are just things like you can't open your shop here. You can open it in one place, you can't open it here, so forth. And so these things are all things that can make it more difficult to open a business. Now, those are all, we finished the task environment. Now we move to the general environment. The general environment is things like the overall economy. The overall economy can affect the success or failure of a business. So if the overall economy is hurting, then it doesn't matter if your business is successful or not successful. If the overall economy is hurting, then you're going to have less customers just because of that. Technology. Technology can change business success. The ability to reach customers in different ways is a change in technology. That changes the way we do things. The fact that I am teaching to you online right now is an example of technology changing how we do things. 20 years ago, what I'm doing right now was not possible. I'm not even sure if it was possible 10 years ago. But technology changes how we do things. That's the point there. The term demographics. Demographics is an important term. Remember when we had the term diversity? Diversity was all the ways that you can categorize. We had a chart back in chapter 3, I believe, that had all the ways people are different. So you can look at difference in age, gender, male and female, what nationality, what religion, etc. So so each country looks at their demographics, and every company looks at the demographics of the customers they're trying to reach. So the UAE demographic challenge is that there are lots of young people. The demographic challenge that the UAE faces is that there are more young people that want to come into the workforce. And how does the government create enough jobs for all of these young people? This is something that I have read many stories about how the government is trying to create enough jobs for all of its young people. By the way, the opposite problem is true in my country. In my country, the problem is, and it's very true, the opposite is true in France, Italy, definitely Italy. The problem there is that there are too many old people and there aren't enough young people coming into the workforce. So it's an exact opposite problem that we have here. So that's interesting. Okay, our last topic that we're going to cover for this chapter, we've talked about globalization, talked about that enough. The last topic we're going to talk about here is a tariff. A tariff is when you have a tax on imports, okay? A tariff is, occasionally there are tariffs on exports, but usually tariffs are on imports. And there's a couple reasons to have tariffs. The main reason that countries have tariffs is that they try to raise revenue or they try to protect a local industry, okay? I'm not gonna write that down because that's not gonna be on a test. I'm not gonna ask you, what are the 2 reasons why, whatever, but those are the 2 reasons, okay? And I have some other notes here talking about the GCC and the US dollar. And honestly, for this semester, I don't care about that stuff so much. So we'll just let that go. Free trade doctrine, that's a kind of important idea. That, I guess, free trade zone is where you agree not to tax others in this area. So the UAE does not tax anything that comes in from Oman. The UAE does not tax anything that comes in from Saudi. And Saudi does not tax anything that comes in from the UAE. It is very common for neighboring countries to not tax things of neighboring countries. So we have, from America, we do that with our neighbor Canada above us and our neighbor Mexico from below us. That's an example of a free trade zone, free trade doctrine. Trade barriers overall are declining. Hopefully that's true. And then Hofstede's model of national culture, that is a long topic that I will think about how much I want to cover here. I'll cover it briefly. You should read in the book about this. I will not ask a lot of questions on this, but I will ask a few questions. The difference between individualism and collectivism. Individualism is the degree to which, let me make this big. Individualism is the degree to which people feel you are on your own versus collectivism, where you feel that we're all in this together. So I come from a country that is very high on individualism, because in the US, we believe you're on your own. I would say in my time here that I view the UAE as being much more collectivism, that we're in this together. And seeing how the leaders of this country are dealing with this virus, this is a great example of collectivism. We're all in this together. We have to find ways to move forward. Power distance, next item here, power distance. Power distance is the degree to which, I don't know to what degree I want to cover all this, because I don't know what's going to be on your. So I'm going to just say that I'm going to talk to my colleagues to talk about how much we need to cover this, because I think, because you will, when you take organizational behavior, we spend a lot of time talking about it there. So I think I'm going to not talk about this anymore, because you're going to have enough information in this class as it is. So I'm going to leave it there, and that's where I will end this video, and that's how we end chapter 6. So I hope you are well, and I hope this video was not too boring for you. Bye-bye.